window. Okay. And Angie, you've got the chat and Q&A boxes up.
I have the chat and Q&A boxes open, so anyone who has questions can chat away.
Perfect. Okay. Hey guys, I am April Rozzo, one of our registered dietitians with Florida Cancer Specialists. Angie is also one of our dietitians, Angie Mathewson. Mathewson, that's what I thought. So she will be moderating. She will be keeping an eye on the chat and Q&A boxes for me while I am cooking. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Today we are doing pesto scrambled eggs with summer vegetables. What we're going to do first, I'm going to go ahead and get this skillet heating. Medium heat is perfectly fine. So we're going to get that started. So we're going to chop up a few vegetables. I've already got some tomatoes chopped up. We're going to finish chopping some onion and summer squash so that we can get those cooking, because they're going to take the longest to cook and kind of soften. And then once we get those in the skillet, we'll make pesto, and we'll talk more about that as we go. And then we'll be ready to throw everything else in the skillet, and we'll have a perfect meal. So we're going to start with chopping some onions, and then we'll just dive in. This is, and you could do them diced if you want to, like little pieces. When I do like a skillet vegetable hash, I like the longer pieces of onion. I like the bigger chunks of onion in my veggies. So I'm going to do just a simple straight cut. This is one of my go-to lunches or dinners. Let's say I haven't prepared anything, I don't feel like cooking when I finish working. I don't always put pesto in it, but eggs and veggies, my go-to breakfast for dinner. It's so easy. It's always delicious. It gives me the opportunity to use up whatever vegetables I happen to have in my kitchen. Today I'm using tomatoes and summer squash. I've put potatoes, mushrooms, broccoli, asparagus, whatever's in season, whatever you have on hand, you can put in this stir fry. And then just to kind of jazz it up, we're gonna add some pesto, make it a little special, a little different. So I've got two different kinds of squash. I've got the yellow squash and I've got zucchini, just for a little bit of color. So that we get the best of both worlds. Our tomatoes are a great source of lycopene and vitamin C, both of which are antioxidants. And then our summer squash here is a really good source also of vitamin C, but zucchini in particular is a great source of potassium, and it's got some vitamin B6 in it for brain health.
What about the onions?
The onions, you tell me, Angie.
Well, the onions are one of those alleles word I have trouble saying. But I love onions just because they do have obvious health benefits, but they are they just add great flavor without having to add some extra salt.
Yes. And that is one of the reasons that I like the pesto so much. Now there is salt in the pesto. There is a little pinch of added salt, and then you're getting the salt from the Parmesan cheese. But the basil itself is so flavorful that between the salt already in the pesto and the flavor coming from that fresh basil, I'm not going to have to add any salt to the dish afterwards. The pesto is gonna flavor it completely for me. Typically, pesto will have pine nuts in it. If you have a traditional pesto, you're gonna get pine nuts, which is totally fine. The reason that we're using walnuts today, a couple of reasons. Pine nuts are a little bit pricey. I don't know if you've shopped for pine nuts before, but borderline breaking the bank for pine nuts. So the walnuts are a little bit more accessible. And we're getting the benefit of some omega-3 heart healthy fatty acids from those walnuts. So that's why we're using those today. You can use any nut in pesto, but like I said, traditionally it's pine nuts if you're looking for that. If you buy pesto in the store, which you absolutely can, instead of making it, and I'll tell you why I'm making it, but if you buy it in the store, we're just adding some extra virgin olive oil to the skillet here, our hot skillet. Pesto, store-bought pesto is usually going to have pine nuts in it, unless it specifies otherwise, just so you know. So we'll get all this going.
I really love that skillet that you use, April. Do you use that like when you're cooking for non-video, or do you use your stove?
Most of the time I use my stove and just put a large skillet like this on the stovetop. But for these purposes, I don't have to have my back to you. I can just plug in.
Right, and I'm thinking it would be maybe easier cleanup, right? Because I always get splatter on the stove. That's hard to get off that glass top.
Super easy cleanup. I can just unplug the heat mechanism and soak the whole thing and scrub it. It's also non-stick, so it's really easy to clean that way also. I should use it more. And I really, you know, I'm so used to pulling a pan out of the cupboard. But yeah, this is super convenient. I love it. All right, so now that's cooking. We're gonna let it cook for 3 or 4 minutes until it starts to soften before we add the other veggies in. So we're gonna do the pesto. The reason that I am making pesto, if you have watched any of my teaching kitchens before, you know what a fan I am of prepping in advance and having stuff in the fridge or freezer so that I don't have to run to the grocery store. This is about 2 cups of basil. So this recipe is going to give me way more basil than I need for this pesto recipe. It's going to give me way more pesto rather than I need. And when it's done, I'm going to put it in ice cube trays, freeze it, and then I'm going to have a whole bunch of single serve 2 tablespoon frozen cubes of pesto that I can pull out of the freezer whenever I feel like making something with pesto. A 1/3 cup of walnuts. We've got a 1/2 cup of grated Parmesan. And again, me and my prep and my love of cheese, you can buy a container of already grated Parmesan. I really like fresh grated Parmesan. So I buy the wedges and just throw it all in the blender or the food processor and grate it. And just like I do with my garlic, I buy like 3 wedges of Parmesan all at once, grate them all at once, and then I have a great big bag of grated Parmesan in the freezer for whenever I want to use it.
Does that change how it tastes at all when you use it for cooking?
It does not.
Probably because it has a low moisture content, I would imagine, the harder Parmesan.
Yeah. I've got 4 cloves of garlic here that I just smashed so that I could take the peel off. And you don't need to mince or chop them ahead of time because the blender is going to do that for you. Got a little salt and pepper like we talked about, like a 1/4 teaspoon, 1/2 teaspoon. And then a 1/2 cup of extra virgin olive oil. I'm going to pour in here. So
now, when you go to use your ice cube, your pesto ice cubes, would you like thaw them ahead of time, or could you like plop an ice cube on top of your cooked pasta?
I would thaw it out ahead of time just so that it doesn't chill the pasta.
Yeah.
You know, it'll slow down the cooking on the pasta. All right, this is going to be loud for a sec. So full disclosure, I was telling Angie earlier.
I was just going to ask about that.
Yes. Normally, I would make pesto in my food processor, but my food processor is kind of on its last leg. It has seen better days, that food processor. think it was my mom's food processor, actually, that I inherited when she got a new one. So we are using the blender, which I don't normally use, but it's gonna work just fine. It just needs a little extra TLC.
Yeah, so you just kind of had to pack it down because the food processor has the whiter base.
Yeah, you just have to stir it a couple of times so that all the leaves and everything get mixed in with the olive oil. Voila, we have pesto.
Ta-da!
Like magic. So I'll just set that aside. Our veggies are cooking. You can see the onions are starting to get a little translucent and they're softening. So we're going to go ahead and add the tomato and the egg.
So will the tomatoes give off much juice or not too much?
A little bit. So when I chopped up the tomatoes, I actually got rid of most of the juice in the seeds for that reason. I like the juice in the seeds,
Yeah.
but I didn't want my dish to be wet from all the tomato juice.
Mm-hmm.
So it really won't give off that much. So as we're cooking, yep, those are starting to soften. Now, when you are making this recipe, let's say you hate eggs or you are following a vegan diet, you have options to adapt this recipe. If you're not following a vegan diet and you just don't like eggs, you could always put some ground turkey or some ground chicken in this instead of the egg. It'll taste just as great. If you are following a vegetarian vegan diet and you're trying to stay away from eggs and cheese, you can absolutely convert this. You can use extra firm tofu instead of the egg. So you would cook all the veggies the same, and then you would crumble some extra firm tofu, and it'll take 4 minutes or so to cook in the skillet. And then you just continue the recipe as normal. And for the pesto, you actually can use vegan Parmesan cheese. So if you're feeling adventurous, you can make vegan Parmesan cheese with some nutritional yeast, cashew nuts, raw cashew nuts, some garlic powder and salt. Nutritional yeast is very similar to the yeast you would use to make bread. The difference is that it's been heated and dried in a process that makes it inactive. And it's very common as a cheese substitute for vegan recipes.
Yeah, and it's one of the few vegan sources of vitamin B12.
Thank you. Yes.
I like it on popcorn. And I make a salad dressing out of it. I'm not vegan. I'm just occasionally adventurous.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, if you're not adventurous, you can buy vegan cheese, vegan Parmesan cheese at the grocery store. I've seen it at Publix. I've seen it at Sprouts. I actually almost picked it up on accident at Sprouts when I was buying Parmesan cheese. Would have been fine. So those are both options to make this recipe vegan, just as easy, simple alterations. So we whisked up 3 eggs and poured that right in the skillet.
And you separated the eggs. You have those on one side. So,
yeah,
that'll scramble them a little bit separately instead of kind of making it more of a frittata.
Instead of coating the vegetables.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Because I don't necessarily want coated vegetables. I want scrambled eggs. So we're just giving those. And once they're scrambled, then we're going to get some of that pesto out of the blender and mix everything together. So we'll open that, grab my spoon. And this is about 2 tablespoons that we're going to put in. So I'm just going to put some on the veggies. And I'll grab another spoonful to kind of put in the egg. Okay. And then we're just going to give it all a stir. Because we really want that pesto to coat everything. We're going to go ahead and mix, now that the eggs are cooked and scrambled, we're going to go ahead and mix it all in with the veggies. Look how colorful this is, you guys. This is the heart of summer right here.
I love that fork also. Did you whisk the eggs with that, and then you can still stick it in and kind of,
So
oh, you
I
whisk
could
the
have
eggs
whisked
with
the
that.
eggs with this, but I did, yes, I
Okay.
did use a whisk.
Okay.
But yeah, this is a nice multi-purpose tool here. I can smell the garlic and the basil all mixed together. Now, this is for two or three people, depending on your portion sizes and how big of a meal you want. But basically 3 eggs, 3 cups of vegetables, divided between 2 people, nice and filling. And that's it. What time is it? It's 12:20. We started at 12. We're done.
Yeah, and like you said, you did some prep work ahead of time.
Yeah.
However, some of this prep work, like the ice cube tray, like we could pull these out.
Right.
You mentioned using leftover veggies, which is what I've done when I have this for lunch sometimes, minus the pesto, but I've started adding the pesto, just whatever veggies are kind of like not going to reheat again and be acceptable to my small
Right.
children.
Well, and
I
that's
toss
the
with some
thing.
eggs.
Yeah. So normally I'll cook a lot on the weekend and eat leftovers through the week, but not everything tastes good as leftovers.
Right.
So this is something that you can make for 1 or 2 people or 4. I mean, it doesn't matter. But
Add
this
more
is
eggs.
something you just add more eggs, add more veggies, depending on how many people you're serving. And there are no leftovers. Now this is for 2 people. I'll probably have it for lunch today, and I'll go ahead and have it for lunch tomorrow, because everything I put in it, the zucchini, the tomatoes, it'll taste great. The pesto will have time to kind of meld, and it'll probably taste even better tomorrow. But this is absolutely something that you could do without leftovers if you're not big on leftovers. The things that we did in advance, it only took us 20 minutes. The things that I did in advance were peeling the garlic, smashing and peeling the garlic, chopping up a couple of little Roma tomatoes. That was it. I gathered and measured my ingredients. So let's add another 5 minutes,
5 minutes
to our total.
Yeah.
That's all I did in advance for this. Next time, the pesto will already be made because it'll be in my freezer. And so all I'll have to do is pull out a cube of pesto and defrost it in the microwave. So that'll save me even just the step of making the pesto while the veggies were cooking.
One thing I think we were going to ask, you mentioned that pine nuts are kind of spendy for some of our food budgets, which is definitely true. So when you buy store-bought pesto, they buy them in bulk. So the store-bought pesto is cheaper for the pine nuts, but the walnuts, as you said, have some extra health benefits. If though you're going to do it at home, I have noticed that basil is a lot more expensive than spinach. So spinach would give a different flavor, but so yeah, you want to mention spinach pesto?
Yeah, so you're exactly right. If you'd use all spinach, it is definitely cheaper, but you lose that whole basil taste,
fresh
of
flavor,
the pesto. Yeah. So it's a totally different taste if you're using spinach. My suggestion would be to go half and half. Now you have options for basil too. So I bought the little plastic containers of fresh basil that you see at the grocery store, because I have a basil plant in the backyard that is not doing well. I bought the basil plant about a month ago for this, it'll grow.
It'll be
basil.
beautiful.
I can bring the plant in and show it off. No. So you don't want to see my basil plant. It is not doing well. And so then where do you get basil? So you have the option of going to the grocery store and buying a small basil plant, just to make that pesto. You can also buy those little plastic containers like I did of fresh basil. You can also, so that you don't have to buy that much, because those little plastic containers are expensive.
I want to say like $4.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
now Publix had them on sale. So
Very
I
good.
scored there, BOGO. So
Love the BOGOs.
love the BOGOs. But you could absolutely do half and half. You could do half basil, half spinach, because the spinach is not going to affect the flavor if you still have some basil in there. So the spinach will kind of act as a filler, but you still have some basil in the recipe to give you that flavor.
Yeah.
And then it won't be so pricey to make.
Right.
You know, yeah. You can, like I said, you can buy pesto. The benefit for me of making it today is that I have all this pesto now that I can freeze, and I don't.
Which, if you look at it
pesto,
that way, it's could get to the same economic washout as the little jar that I have in my fridge.
And then I don't have to run to the store on Wednesday night or Saturday afternoon when I decide I want to make another dish with pesto in it to go get a jar of pesto, because I've already got it in my freezer. So that would be the other benefit. I try to keep things like Parmesan, like pesto. I keep little ice cube size buttermilk, frozen buttermilk in the freezer, because I don't use it enough.
Right. No,
I
never
buy a
have
container
buttermilk.
of buttermilk this big, and you only need 2 tablespoons of it.
Yeah.
So, you put the rest in the ice cube trays and freeze it.
I think that you need to come over and organize my refrigerator.
I can't organize anything else, but I'm really good in the kitchen.
Good deal. That's a start.
Do we have any questions?
I am not seeing any questions coming in.
You and I are
I
just
did want to
chatting
say
away.
I remembered the word allium was the word I was looking for with onions. Onions are the flagship allium vegetable. So they're the purple globy flowers that we see, but they're also our delicious antioxidant, anti-inflammatory onions.
Yes. Same with the garlic. The garlic has those anti-inflammatory properties. Ooh. And you can use any onions that you choose. I use a yellow onion. It has a milder flavor, almost sweet. You could use red onions, shallots for kind of a sharper, tangier flavor, depending on what vegetables you use and what you like, what kind of taste you like. So those
the concept of the scramble, I think, would go with just about any vegetable. It kind of depends on personal preference. Yeah, I feel like the red onion would overpower the pesto, maybe.
This in particular, these ingredients that I use, the zucchini, the tomato, they're light enough in flavor that probably all you would taste is red onion. Yeah. Which is why I use the yellow onion. But again, depending on what kind of vegetables you put in, the red onion might be perfect for it.
And we were about to have a question, but we answered it. Natisha says, I was going to ask if it mattered which kind of onion.
It does not. Your preference. Yes. A lot of times I'll go into the grocery store and just see what's on sale. What vegetables are on sale, what onions are on sale. A lot of times it's what's in season that is usually cheaper and on sale. So that's kind of how I pick my grocery list.
There's no questions coming in. Does anybody so we asked about the eggs, the tofu versus eggs to make it a vegetarian or vegan dish. You did say it was firm tofu that you used to scramble, or extra firm?
Yeah, well, so I would probably use the extra firm because it would be easier to crumble so that you could cook it. Yeah.
And I actually think that, sometimes my complaint with tofu when I've tried it is it absorbs flavor, right? But if you did it with just the veggies, I think you'd feel like you were eating veggies and flavorless crumble. But the pesto, I think, would really be nice with the tofu.
The flavor. Yeah. So if you do it with tofu, those of you who follow a vegan diet, you've probably cooked with tofu before. If you buy the extra firm tofu, you want to press the water out, first, because it comes in water. So you really want to press out as much water as possible, and then you can crumble it and cook it in with your veggies. And then add
So
the
I
tofu.
do have a question coming in about about onions in general. So I've now touted the benefits of onion in terms of their health and anti-inflammation.
You might have to answer this question, Andy.
So the question is there a substitute for those who do not like onions in terms of like the health benefit? I mean, from the culinary standpoint, we've kind of said this can be any vegetables. In fact, I think when I did it, it was broccoli and mushrooms because that's what I had.
Right.
I was not sure about broccoli with pesto, but it was delicious. The garlic and onion have really similar nutritional benefits. So you could, just use the garlic, but
Right.
I mean, I don't know
and
what
lots of other veggies, onions have that potent anti-inflammatory, antioxidant power, but so do a lot of your other colorful fruits and vegetables. So you don't have to use onions to get those benefits, to get the anti-inflammatory and antioxidant benefits.
Right. If you're not getting it from the allium, you can get it from the cruciferous.
Yes.
So I always say it's about variety. So to your point of like how colorful that dish is, that translates to a variety of benefits.
Right. Different vitamins, different minerals, different antioxidants in this
different
dish.
types of fiber.
So yes, you can skip the onions. Any other questions?
Oh, and one of our other dietitians, thank you, Heather, mentions that green onions don't have as strong a flavor as other onions, but are still an allium veg.
Perfect. Thank you, Heather. Green onions, chives,
and that would be a nice topper.
Family.
You could chop them up and top it.
Yes. I like to use green onions in like a cold salad because it does have a milder flavor, but it still adds to it. I don't want raw onion to overpower the dish.
Yes. Yeah, they're lovely in salad.
Okay, guys.
Okay.
Super quick, super easy. My go-to fallback for dinner when I don't feel like cooking. So there you go. Join me, let's see, next month, we're doing a regular Lunch and Learn webinar on the gut microbiome, which is Angie's favorite.
One of my favorites.
And then in October, we'll be back in the kitchen. I don't know with what yet. So as always, I am open to requests and stay tuned.
All right, fantastic.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.